everyone. Welcome back. I'm Deborah Gardner with Hospitality Today Live here on a special edition of GMID Day, celebrating all around the world. And my special guest next, you're going to want to meet and probably already know about, but this is going to be so exciting for what we're going to talk about today. With the leading America's only national association dedicated to serving the interests of the entire hotel and lodging industry, we're going to have the president and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association, Chip Rogers. Now, in his role, Chip has led his team and the lodging industry to achieve remarkable results for their members. And because of this, Chip has received a laundry list of awards. And like, for example, he's been recognized as one of the top 25 most influential in the business travel news area, one of the most influential people in Washington, D.C. by Washingtonian magazine, the top 50 most influential leaders in hospitality, USA, and global by Hospitality Index, a Freedom Award recipient of ECPAT USA, and twice awarded as a top lobbyist by the Hill newspaper. Whew, a lot of great credentials there. So today, Chip is actually going to enlighten us with the state of the hotel industry and the recovery, workforce solutions, and the importance of meetings events. So get ready for a whirlwind of a conversation with Chip Rogers on this special GMID edition, up next right here on Hospitality Today Live. Today's episode is sponsored by Efficient Health Solutions, your preferred health insurance provider for the hospitality industry, efficienthealthsolutions.com. Well, we are here with Mr. Chip Rogers. Welcome, sir.
Deborah, good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us too, especially on this great day for GMID. We're very, very excited about it. And of course, it's a worldwide celebration. And we're just thrilled that you were able to join us for a great conversation, an in-depth conversation about what's going on in the hotel industry. But before we do get started, I understand that you used to be a former radio broadcaster, TV broadcaster, as a matter of fact, for, I guess, for the big time sports. You're a big time sports guy, as a matter of fact.
I am, and today's a big day, of course, with the NCAA tournament going on and baseball spring training underway, and you've got the NBA season heading towards the playoffs, the NHL season. So a lot of great stuff happening in sports. And yes, I've done a lot of radio and television. So this is always enjoyable to me, and I'm glad to be part of your show.
Oh, this is great. This is great. I know, big Atlanta Braves fan and Miami Dolphin fan, and I love sports as well. And it's so exciting that that you stay on top of all that as well, because we need sometimes that outlet from what we do on a daily basis. Now, prior to joining the hospitality industry, you actually served in the Georgia General Assembly, elected to office 6 times, as a matter of fact, and was elected twice to serve as the Senate Majority Leader. You know, as I bet, as a former state legislature, you have a very unique perspective and to engagement and advocacy for all the decisions that you make every day in your role, don't you?
Well, yeah, I've had the opportunity to sit on kind of both sides of the desk, if you will, being lobbied and then doing the lobbying. And they're totally different jobs. But incredibly important. You know, it's so important to advocate for yourself, for your industry, for your interest. And the best way we know how important this is that our founding fathers put it in the First Amendment to the bill, to the U.S. Constitution. The first part of the Bill of Rights talks about the right to address your grievances to your government. And so that's really what lobbying is. It is being able to talk to your elected representatives and tell them your story and what they're doing that may be or may not be impacting your industry. And so we take it very seriously. We have an entire team that does so in Washington, D.C., and then we work with our partners at the state and local level, and we really work on issues across the country, whether it's in a city like Los Angeles or the state of Missouri or the United States of America. Wherever there's an issue that impacts hoteliers, we're there trying to either partner with folks to get those issues addressed or handling them ourselves, oftentimes at the federal level.
That's great to hear, and there's nobody better than you heading something like that up with that kind of experience. It makes a lot of sense, and it's much needed in the industry. So thank you so much for your service in doing all that and bringing all of that to the table. And yet, I know that the pandemic has been such a devastating effect on our industry, even though it's not our first rodeo. We've been through things like this before, but this one was a different animal. This was a beast, in other words, and it affected everyone, not only professionally, but personally at the same time. Can you share with us what your journey, what you experienced through all of this?
You know, it's a really interesting time to be in our industry. We had, up until the end of 2019, we had 9 consecutive years of incredible growth in our industry. We were coming out of, before that 9 years before that, coming out of the financial meltdown that happened in 08, 09, and we started rebounding in 2010. And then year after year after year, the industry continued to grow at a record pace. And so think about being at the high of all highs and then just kind of falling off a cliff. And that's exactly what happened when the pandemic hit. The occupancy rates in the United States fell to the lowest point they'd ever been, ever recorded for our industry. And so, when you lead an association that represents an industry that is hit as hard as ours was, you really have to pivot rather quickly and do things much differently than you would have done in normal times. Because typically for us, when we're lobbying, whether it be Congress or a city council or a state legislature, we oftentimes are asking government to just not do anything at all that would impact our business, just kind of stay out of the way and let us do what we're going to do. And we do it quite well as an industry. Then, of course, the pandemic hit and everything had to change because we were lobbying Congress for resources to keep the industry afloat. If you look at 2020 and 2021 combined, the total amount of room revenue lost was about $110 billion. No one would have dreamed the industry could withstand a $110 billion loss. When you layer on top of that the non-room revenue, you're probably talking somewhere between $150 and $160 billion in total losses over 2 years. And so we had to advocate to the federal government to try to make up for some of that, because this, of course, was no fault of the hoteliers. And the government was quite helpful. We estimate a little bit more than $50 billion of federal aid came into our industry, not nearly enough to fill that giant hole that was created. But that's a tough job. And we were doing that for day after day and week after week and month after month for about 2 years. And so now we're to the point where we're really talking more about recovery. Where do we go from here? What does the industry look like from here? And not so much about continued financial assistance from the federal government. I think they're past that at this point. But it's been a very challenging couple of years.
Yeah, it really has. And it seems as though, although we're past this huge effect of the pandemic, we still have challenges going on. We've got the inflation going on that's affecting the average consumer, and the gas and groceries and things like that. How does that affect the hotel sector as far as whether it's leisure, BT, or group? How are they doing? Are the meetings coming back? Are you seeing anything, any improvements? Is there a particular pace that's happening right now? Because even according to the STAR report, our RevPAR is not at the 2019 numbers, but occupancy is all over it's a different day. It's a different report every day. What is that looking like for hotels?
So the nature of who's traveling has certainly changed. Leisure travel, which prior to the pandemic was usually about 45% of travelers, it's now up closer to over 60%. And so that leisure travel business is incredibly important right now. And you're going to see maybe record levels of leisure travel business happening throughout the spring and the summer. As you noted, it has been a spotty recovery. if you're in Miami or Tampa or Phoenix, you've done quite well over the last couple of years. In fact, Miami last week on the STR report was up 22% over the same time in 2019, the same week. So that's 22% on RevPAR up. Now, the flip side of that is you have San Francisco and Washington, D.C. and Minneapolis that continue to struggle. San Francisco was down 45% last week compared to the same week in 2019. And so it has been a very spotty recovery. It's being led by leisure travel. We're going to continue to see that throughout the spring and summer. And we'll have a record year probably around leisure travel. Problem is, as you know, is that business travel and non-leisure travel in normal times actually makes up a majority of the revenue that is generated in our industry. And so we're starting to see some business travel come back. The meetings and conferences are starting to happen, but keep in mind, many of these conferences, if you're talking large citywide conferences, it takes a few years to plan those things. And so, those are going to take a while to get fully back. And because of that, we won't see anything happening for total revenue looking like 2019 until some point, probably at the end of 2023.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And usually the BT follows the leisure, but I'm seeing that lagging quite a bit this time because of, I guess, the confidence level, or could it be budget or whatnot? But would it be helpful to know that we can speed up the process of having meetings and events happen based on construction? What are the hotel construction numbers like out there? Are they happening? Are they building? Is it happening to help? Because the meeting and event professionals right now are looking for those venues, and they're probably going to fight for those to where they're going to have to do multi-contracts in order to hold that space. So is construction happening all over the US and the world?
It is. Construction is back, but the problem is that it takes much, much longer because of the supply chain disruptions and the lack of labor, not just in our industry, which has been devastating to our industry, but even in the construction industry. And so when you think about the challenge of getting people to build things, and then you think about the challenge of getting the things that are necessary to build things, it's just taking a lot longer. In fact, I'm hearing from many hoteliers that they're tacking on 40 to 50% longer to complete a project compared to 2019. And so, the demand is out there, as you referenced a moment ago. The resources are there. People are building. It's just taking much, much longer.
Yeah, definitely. We all have to be patient. We've gotten this far, so we got to hang in there a little bit longer. And again, the good news is we're all in it together, and we're not alone in this whole process. So If everybody can be just patient and work through it, we'll get there, definitely. You mentioned earlier about labor. The workforce shortage, of course, continues to pester many industries. The CNN business report reported that the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that our nation has still about 11.3 million jobs yet to fill. Even there's an online mortgage service company that laid off like 900 people over the Zoom, and is still thinking about laying off 3,000 more people. What is the hotel industry doing to support recruitment and retention efforts to grab those unemployed workers, especially when we're heading into spring break in the summer months?
Boy, everything that you can possibly imagine. The industry has really changed rapidly over the last few months because of this labor challenge. The interview process, again, which might have taken in the past a week or two to process somebody through, now happens in a single day. People are being hired on the spot. Instant pay has become almost the industry standard now. If you work, at the end of the day, you're going to get a transfer of money to pay you for that particular day. So we're seeing these things happen, along with really what the employees want the most, which is the flexibility around when they work and how they work. And so, the traditional times of housekeepers coming in at 7 a.m. in the morning, that kind of model is really being destroyed. And so using technology and being able to determine when guests are coming in and when guests are coming out of hotel rooms is really helping us be able to handle some of this. But the enormous lack of total employees that we need in the industry is really hamstringing this recovery, because there are some hotels that could be operating at 100% occupancy but are having to close off rooms just because there aren't enough people to clean those rooms.
Right, right. And you're right. I see this business model changing. It's almost like an Uber business type of model where the flexibility and like you said, the pay is instant. And I think the flexibility is actually pretty good because you might have a working mom that has to go pick up kids at a particular time, or maybe if you get a late booking, which can happen too, that can turn into different shifts of people covering those spots. So maybe that flexibility will help more workers coming back to know that they can work around their schedule too. So that's different. That's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for sure. Now, what I wanted to know, and I know the viewers would too, is what about the future for American Hotel and Lodging Association? I understand you just announced this 5-year strategic plan, the road to thriving for the future of some sort. And that plan that you're going to be implementing, I'm sure our viewers would love to know what a major association like yours is doing to create new ideas. Can you tell us about that 5-year strategic plan?
Sure. So, we came out of the pandemic needing to renew our strategic plan because the old one had expired. But I think even more importantly, the industry had changed dramatically. And so we brought together all the stakeholders, the CEOs from all the major brands, ownership groups, management companies, even vendors, fellow associations that we work with, got everyone together and said, look, what do we need to be doing over the next 5 years to address what we know the challenges will be for our industry? And we created a strategic plan to do exactly that. Now, when you think about what those challenges are, we've talked a lot about the main challenge, which is workforce. How do we not only recruit people into the industry, but keep them in the industry? Our turnover rate for the hospitality industry, particularly hotels, is the worst in the country amongst any other major industry. And you can't continue to sustain that. So we've got to find a way to get people on a career path to stay in our industry. One of the things that we've done at AHLA in partnership with the U.S. Department of Labor, we created a few years ago an apprenticeship program, and through our foundation, which administers that program, we're taking people that are identified as future leaders in our industry, putting them through the apprenticeship program, and the retention rate on those people is 90%. And so we're extremely happy with that. We know that's a model that works. The second thing that we're looking at is how do we engage with local elected officials, particularly around workplace rules, many of these workplace rules being driven by organized labor that can cause hotels to go out of business in some places. California is a prime example of an area where some of the draconian workplace rules that are being passed by local lawmakers are unworkable. They cannot work in our industry. And how do we work with officials to make sure those things don't happen? The third thing is looking at alternative accommodations. When you think about the technology that has changed the way that we travel, it has certainly impacted the hotel industry. And there are lots of folks who offer rooms for rent now that aren't specifically a hotel, and that's fine. We have no problem with competition, but it needs to be fair competition. The playing field needs to be leveled. So we focus a lot on that. And then finally, what are we doing about stakeholder stewardship in our industry? We identified 3 areas where we believe the hotel industry not only could lead, but should lead. First and foremost, stopping human trafficking. Second, promoting sustainability in all of our practices and buildings throughout the hospitality industry. And then third, the DE&I initiative that we have, and we've started that even before this, but making sure that in leadership positions throughout our industry, that everyone has a fair opportunity and that our industry looks like the people that we serve. And so, we're focused on a lot of really heavy, important things, but we've got a great team in place and the resources to be able to capitalize on all this. And over the next 5 years, we're going to see some significant results that help the industry.
That's great. And it always starts at the top with the leaders. So it's really good to see something like this. And an aggressive plan as well. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of success in those implementations to have those happen. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I know you advocate for, is what you were talking about is human trafficking. It's a huge, huge threat to not only to the industry, but to our society at the same time. Modern slavery is second to organized crime. And I can see why AHLA is involved in this, because when you're thinking of the internet, a hotel and a freeway, you know that there are human trafficking is happening. And so it hits probably close to home to you. And so I think it's brilliant to really advocate for it. And I understand, though, you also have done some training during COVID pertaining just to this area.
Yeah, so our effort is called No Room for Trafficking, which we started 2 years ago, really has one goal in mind, and that is to make sure that every hotel employee across the United States, no matter if you're in a small independent hotel to the largest resorts that we have in our great country, but that all of those employees are trained to see the signs of human trafficking and know what to do with that information. And so our goal is focused right now solely on training. We're looking at how we can then also help survivors. That's kind of the next step of how we're building this thing out. And this is a program that's not going anywhere. In fact, it's permanent at AHLA. We have people that are permanently dedicated. This is their only job, is to work on No Room for Trafficking, because we believe it's that important. We understand that across the world, there are 40 million people that are trafficked each and every year. Many of them are children. That is unacceptable. That is not, we can't live in a society that turns a blind eye to these things. And so we're going to do our part, going to continue to do our part in the hospitality industry to shine a light on human trafficking and show people just how dangerous and destructive this is, and what we can do to help stop it. And so it's a passion of mine. It's a passion of my entire team. And we're making a difference. We've probably trained, the industry's, I'm sure, trained well over 1 million people in the last couple of years, over 500,000 last year alone through the Marriott ECPAT program that we helped create and promote. But this is something that, again, is not going to go away. We're going to stay at this until we get everybody trained.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And it's definitely a need. And I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think it's talked about enough as well. So heading it up there at AHLA is going to be a huge, huge improvement for our industry. Definitely our industry. Well, this was definitely a delight to talk to you today. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers for GMID Day? What does it mean to you, and anything that you'd like to say within this platform?
Well, Deborah, no, just thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. And for all of you that are watching, that are part of our industry, thank you for what you've done to keep things going the last couple of years. I know there were times when we all looked around and said, is this even are we going to survive this? But not only have we survived, I'm convinced we're going to thrive. Human nature is that people need to be with people. These technologies are nice. You get to hear Deborah and I talk and watch. But the reality is we've got to ultimately be around people. Travel matters. It brings the world closer. It makes the world a better place. We understand other people, other cultures. And that's what this is all about, the spirit of hospitality. And so I know we're going to be better off 5 years from now than we were 5 years ago. I'm convinced of that. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of it.
That's great. That's great. And I know that you're always on the road, traveling, visiting around, and a lot of conferences and meetings, no doubt. And I know probably back home, you probably, we've been able to really be involved with our families and our friends during all of this. And but yet I know one person that's really, actually, I call it a person, four-legged is this person, which I know you adore back at home. But we definitely
he's my boy. That's yeah, I love. Yeah. His name's Mac. He and I are Mac, yeah, M-A-C. We are very, very close. Yeah, he's
adorable. But yeah, with the pandemic again, we've all been reunited pretty close to our family and friends, and even our pets, no doubt. And I appreciate that, Matt. So why don't we give the viewers an opportunity to know how to get a hold of you? We do have your email and of course, AHLA's website. Is there any other way that people can contact you to further this conversation?
Yeah, I do a lot on LinkedIn. And so join me on LinkedIn. I'll do my best to respond to you. I'm growing a pretty nice group of connections on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect with anybody who wants to.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, there you go. Boy, Chip Rogers, for being here with us. It's such a pleasure to get the opportunity, the quality time to talk with you. And again, anybody that wants to further the conversation, know that his email, check out the website, or even LinkedIn will work for us. So thank you so much for your time, sir. We really appreciate it. Happy GMID.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.